Welcome, everyone, to the Predictive Playbook. This is college football week 14, and that means one thing, that we are in the conference championship side of the season, and we have some big matchups to break down for you guys, and hopefully we are going to give some best bets out there. Speaking for myself, I've done well in the championship games and the bowl games, and I only say that because we came off a show last week that we were pretty disappointed in our performance. Granted, we had some bad beats in there too, but still, even 500 is not acceptable, let alone a performance like we had last week. But overall for the season, the show has been profitable, just south of 60% against the spread. So welcome to the show, and we're going to get started right now with Jesse Schule breaking down the American Athletic Conference. We have Houston, a 10.5-point underdog, taking on Cincinnati, which is causing waves in the college football playoff landscape. Do they belong? Don't they belong? I think this is obviously a game that Jesse would agree is going to be a Cincinnati Bearcats win, but then the committee has all kinds of potential problems coming up as the weekend unfolds. But Cincinnati, 10.5-point favorite, over under 53.5 right now. Jesse, it opened at 55, so it's coming down a little bit. Where do you see the betting opportunity in this matchup?
Well, John, I like Cincinnati as much as anybody, and I'd love to see them upset the apple cart and get into the college football playoffs. They're a big favorite. They're a double-digit favorite here, and they deserve to be a favorite. But Houston has won 11 straight games. Quietly without much fanfare, an 11-game winning streak is pretty impressive. And let's take a look at these teams and see, what is actually separating Houston and Cincinnati. At the coaching spot, we got Luke Fickell versus Dana Holgorsen. I'm hesitant to give out an edge there. And let's look at the quarterbacks. We got Clayton Tune for Houston. He's thrown for over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a 69% completion percentage. On the other side, we got Desmond Ridder, 27 touchdowns. That's just one more. 8 interceptions. That's the same. 3,000 yards and a 66% completion percentage. The numbers say Tune's got better numbers. On defense, we got Cincinnati allowing 303 yards per game, 15.8 points per game. Well, Houston's allowing 289 yards per game and 19.8 points per game. Pretty similar numbers. Houston's allowing more points and fewer yards. Pretty close. On offense, Houston is gaining 421 yards per game, 38.8 points per game. Cincinnati, 430 yards per game, 39.6 points per game. Again, very similar. Strength of schedule, you can say that the Cincinnati's win over Notre Dame was more impressive. That game I think was a little bit closer than people realize. Jack Cohn was injured in that game. Notre Dame was forced to turn to their backup quarterback. And Houston lost to Texas Tech in week 1. And really that is what separates these two teams. And I don't believe that's worthy of a double-digit spread here in a championship game. So I'm taking the underdog.
I like that bet. Double-digit dog going against Cincinnati. And Jesse, with Houston's defense, it seems like they have an edge because of takeaways. They do a good job taking away the ball. I believe they rank 10th in the nation. And Cincinnati, despite being ranked so high, they haven't taken care of the ball so good on offense. Do you think that's going to play out in the game?
It very well could.
All right, let's move on to the Pac-12 championship. And this is a game that Dr. Chuck likes. And we're talking Friday night action, December the 3rd. Number 11, Oregon, is an underdog against number 19, Utah. And, of course, that is a flag right there. This game's set to start at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. The total opened at 60. It's now 59.5. Utah opened as a 3-point favorite and remains static at -3. Dr. Chuck, why is Utah the lower-ranked team yet the favorite?
Well, guys, we were discussing off air. It's got to have a lot to do with, we just saw this it was in Utah, and it was ugly, but the two teams haven't had enough opportunity to change since then. I was looking up and down the slate. I didn't want it to be self-serving, as I've been on Utah all season. That was our big regular season win total over, which we squeaked out last week, despite the losses to BYU and San Diego State. Got those 9 wins and won that future play. And I think it's just not a good matchup again for Oregon, no matter it being in Vegas or in Utah. It's a thing, we were discussing off air. Kyle Whittingham is one of the best coaches going, always has his team prepared, can always run the ball, and they can hang their head on the rush defense as well. Him by himself is 22-5 after allowing the opponent not to be able to run the ball. That includes the Oregon matchup in this scenario, as well as 8-1 just the last 3 seasons. In addition to that, just taking into account these two teams have played, and my next game will kind of work on something similar. The record, just the last 10 years, the record's 15-5 for the favorite in a neutral site game, like a championship game in the month of December, to win outright. Against the spread, the numbers aren't that great, but we don't have to worry as much about the spread here. It's only minus 140 on the money line. I'd still probably lay the 2.5 or 3, but 4-0 in the last 4 when the team won the game in the previous same season matchup. And it's just, whether or not Oregon isn't missing the guys, that they're going to have a huge injury report as the week goes on. Even if they're not missing these guys, I just don't think, the market is telling us that this has moved up a few points because it was also minus 3 in Utah, but I just don't think the average score in these games is 28-21. And I think that's giving a little too much credit to Oregon's offense and not enough credit to Utah's offense. And so I think Utah is able to handle this. And if you're skittish about why it isn't a bigger line, take the money line, but I can't imagine Utah losing this game, even having just played.
I agree, and they've allowed their last 4 opponents, 3 of them under 100 yards rushing. Oregon needs to run the ball. They won't be able to all that much against Utah, as you pointed out. So I'm on your side with that one. Now we're going to segue over to the Big Ten. And, of course, we all know Penn State is not in this game, so I have to talk about another team. Now, just kind of kidding. I was getting abused by my co-host, so I'm just making that point. So we got Michigan. Only 42% of the money is on them right now against Iowa. And I think we were an Iowa fan a couple of times. I know in the beginning of the season I had Colorado State as a 10-unit game of the month, and they darn near beat Iowa. Everybody's saying, oh, you got to take the double digits. But 11th ranking for Iowa with an 11.7 yards per point ratio on offense. That means it takes them 11.7 yards to put 1 point on the scoreboard. Iowa is 10th in defensive, also at 18.3 yards per point. And we'll talk about Georgia's defense in the SEC championship game a little bit later. But Michigan is 12.0, ranking 17th in offensive yards per point. Their defense is 8th best in the nation at 18.6. And yards per point is a very important metric this time of year. And that puts these two teams pretty equal. However, in conference championship games with one team ranked 15 or higher, and the opponent is ranked in the top 10, the over is 10-3. The lower ranked team, being Iowa in this case, is 2-11 straight up and just 6-7 against the spread. Iowa ranks 123 on offense in the nation, gaining just 299.3 yards. So, they're going to have their trouble with Michigan, but Michigan can play back. They don't have to be playing like they did the last 3 weeks and be so aggressive, shooting gaps. And they can force Iowa to try to beat them over the top in the secondary, which Iowa has not done all year. So I think that Iowa's going to score enough points for this to go over the total, and I am on the total in this game. So Big 12 championship game now. We have Baylor, noon start on Saturday against Oklahoma State. 58% of the money on Oklahoma State at minus 5.5, despite the line opening at minus 6.5. So that money must be coming in at 6.5 and has subsequently gone down from there. Baylor's 10-2 in the season. Oklahoma State has just that one blemish. They're 7-0 when at home or being the home team. Let's see. Baylor's offense ranks 78th, gaining 219 passing yards per game against an Oklahoma State defense that ranks 11th best in the nation, allowing 185 yards per game. So I think that's the matchup. Let's see what Jesse Schule has to say about this game.
Well, John, our man Dr. Chuck mentioned the statistics for the rematch when one team's beat another team and then they face each other in December in a championship game, and how the team that won the previous meeting has an edge straight up, but not against the spread. Well, this line comes in under a touchdown. So I'm leaning towards Oklahoma State. I'm looking at that previous matchup. Oklahoma State won 24-14, which, a double-digit win, nothing wrong with that. But I believe that game was closer than it should have been, and I believe that the key there was the turnover ratio. 3 interceptions for Spencer Saunders in that game, and still the Cowboys managed to come through and win 24-14. They had an edge in first downs, 24-10, and an edge in total yards, 401 to 280. That game wasn't as close as it appeared to be, and I don't think these teams match up as closely as they appear to. Additionally, Baylor's got some uncertainty at the quarterback position. Bohannon was knocked out of the last game. Freshman Blake Sharpen stepped in, played well, but it's a big difference between playing a home game against Texas Tech and playing the Cowboys in a conference title game. I wouldn't want to come in there with a freshman quarterback. So I'm looking for an easy win for Oklahoma State here in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I like that side too. Good breakdown there, Jesse. We're going to move over to Dr. Chuck here, and we're going to talk about the MAC Conference. And what could be better than the MAC Conference and the totals? I mean, it's the first thing you think about with MACs. The MAC matchups are always high scoring, it seems. But this is for all the marbles. Kent State taking on Northern Illinois University. Noon start. Northern Illinois opened as a 2-point underdog. They're now plus 2.5. I have the total opening at 72. It's now 73.5 and 74, and climbing rapidly, which has been the trend with these MAC games. Dr. Chuck, what's the best bet in this game?
Yes, I'm sure everyone is very surprised here in the middle of Ohio that I am back on MACtion, as we are finished with MACtion, unfortunately, until some bowl game opportunities. But yeah, so you mentioned that it's going up, and so this might be one of those babysit line type spots where you can get a little more money in a certain situation and in a direction and get the best number possible. I'm okay with 74 personally, and am pretty contrarianly big on the under in this spot. And you're saying to me they scored 99 points last month, and it was a 52-47 shootout, and this total's coming in. It opened 4 touchdowns south of that basically, and is now still 25 points south. And it's one of those things. I brought it up the first game. Jesse brought it up in his game. These two teams faced each other, just like Oklahoma State faced Baylor, just like Utah faced Oregon. And in that spot where, taking out the neutral site, but kind of speaking for itself, in that spot, the under in that following game, when the previous game went over and the previous total was over 70, and this total is more, is 18-7 to the under in that following matchup, with a final score in the 35-29 range. And so we're looking at ourselves at a possibly 10-point cushion. But I also just, in general, weekday MACtion kind of fizzled out as far as those huge overs were going as the season went on, not counting Kent State. But at the same time, the game, I was saying this earlier, the games are less. There's less to bet on. Saturday doesn't have nearly as many games and places for people to put their tickets. And what was Vegas wanting to hang if they did hang 72.5, and it's now at 74. And so I probably think that was about a touchdown less. And so just in general, it's going to be easy for me to take a team like Northern Illinois that runs the ball 63% of the time. Even Kent State runs it darn near 60% of the time. And for them to go over this number twice in a month, I'm gladly go way under and think that we might even have a 2-touchdown cushion personally.
Good breakdown there. Chuck, I have a question for you. The concern I have, and it's just a question for you, is these defenses, there's 130 teams in Division I. Kent State ranks 124th, allowing 475 yards. The two combined defenses allowed 930 per game.
Yep.
Tell me why I should still bet the under.
So you're right. And it's a lot of points that these teams are giving up. And I've talked a lot about Northern Illinois being extremely lucky, and Kent State has not really had anybody stopping them. And we were discussing that 3 of their last 4 games have fallen 99, 95, and 84. And so you're telling me, why would I swallow the under? But I mean, it doesn't take, when you're talking about a timed sport, it doesn't take a whole lot more than a 1 red zone turnover and 1 missed field goal to go under a 75, 74 type number. So, I mean, get the best number you can, but it doesn't take a whole lot of, right. Jesse was going to challenge me on flags. That's a problem. That could definitely be a problem. And, converting all the time in the red zone can be a problem, but you just need, but at a total this high, you'd worry about this in the Big Ten with a 50 or a 54, things like that. You just don't need a lot of help staying out of overtime with just a couple mistakes.
Well, I've never seen pass interference called on a running play, and these teams run an awful lot. So maybe there's an edge there. Good job there, Chuck. I'm going to wrap things up here with, you guys will disagree with me. It's my favorite conference. I love the SEC. Who doesn't? And we have the 2 teams that we knew weeks ago were going to collide, and it's Georgia against Alabama. Line opened at some places at -4. There was one that opened at -3.5 Georgia, which I thought, like, what? So now we're up to where I thought we would be at 6.5. Georgia, their defense has not really been talked enough, in my opinion. They're putting up historic numbers that no team in NCAA football history in the Power 5 conferences has ever even come close to matching. I like yards per point. Their yards per point allowed is 33.1. That means an opponent has to go 33 yards to put up 1 point. It's the first team in 25 years, and it might be longer. That's only as far back as I could go in the database, that has been over 30 yards per point defensively. Number 2 this year, in case you're wondering, is Penn State. They're at 21.5. So right then and there, this defense is light years better than any other defense in the land right now. You can talk about Michigan all you want. This Georgia defense is one of the best ever, period. So in championship games, where a team had a defensive yards per point measure of 21 or more, which is a normal season, is outstanding. They're 8-4 against the spread. And in bowl games and college football playoff games, these juggernauts are 16-9-1 against the number. Overall, combine those 2 championship games, bowl game or college football playoff, 24-13-1. That's 65% since 2006. So Georgia, as I said, is the first team since at least 1995 to post a yards per point greater than 30. Only 7 other teams from the Power 5 conferences have ever earned it. You might want to know who they are. Florida had one at 25 in 2014. Missouri, 2014. Alabama Crimson Tide, 2013. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who don't belong in the college football playoff this year, was over 25 that year. And Rutgers in 2012, the year that Schiano was there. And then lastly, in 2009, the Alabama Crimson Tide. So I think, as ridiculous as it may sound, I think Georgia is vastly undervalued in this matchup. Alabama was shut out for 3 quarters against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And I get it. It's a passionate rivalry. Throw that out the window. Alabama was shut out by a team that isn't even close to being in the top 30 in the nation for 3 quarters. Great 99-yard drive, overtime. it fell their way, and they got a 2-point win at Auburn. Georgia's a little bit different. And I'll be sarcastic and leave it at that. So my pick here is going to be on Georgia minus 6.5, and I would take it all the way up to, I would take it up to 9.5. It's not going to get there, but I feel that confident about Georgia in this SEC Conference Championship game.
All right, John, I have one for you.
Okay, fire away.
So we have to give you credit again because the season's ending, and we might as well rehash some good stuff. You called A&M. You even told people to bet the money line in that game. So you think Saban is going to lose to 2 assistants in one season?
Yeah. There's a saying that I learned this from it applies to baseball, but you have a team on a win streak, and it might apply to the Phoenix Suns actually. When you go on a long win streak like that, you lose 1, you lose 2. But I think Georgia's that good. They have the widest yards per point differential, offensive and defensive. They're ranked number 1 on offense, guys, and yards per point. I believe off the top of my head, it's like 10.8, which is outstanding. Anything under 12 is elite. So now you have the best defense and the best offense in yards per point measure. I'm not saying that Georgia is the best offense, but they get it done in a grinding, grueling, pounding fashion. And their numbers are spectacular. So I'll go out on a limb, guys. I'll tell you, they're better, vastly better on both sides of the ball than Alabama. So that's it.
So if Georgia loses to Alabama, next week we're going to have to start talking conspiracy theories on this show.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no question because Penn State belonged in the championship game in the first place. All right, guys, that'll be a wrap for our championship show. It's been a grueling one to say the least, but Dr. Chuck, Jesse, thank you for your time, and on behalf of them and myself and the predictive playbook, may all the wins be yours. Thanks for watching.